for many people, app growth probably means how many more advertising SDKs can I stuff in here before the App Store actually starts taking it. But we've actually got three incredibly different points of view today here. We have two app developers and an agency. So two people are actually on the front line developing new products which we're taking to market, which we're looking to actually entice and delight people, and a parasite who's living off of all their efforts.
Pleasure to meet you.
So we have Hannah from Curio, we have Michael from TaxFix,
Yep.
and we have Jake the parasite.
From Inflecto.
Oh, from Inflecto. So what I'd like to do is actually hand over to these guys, who are actually going to tell you a little bit about themselves and about their products and about their view on how the market is going. And from there, we'll then segue seamlessly into some questions. Everybody all right with that? With that, I'd like to introduce Hannah.
Hi. Hi. Yeah, I am Hannah. I work at Curio, which is an audio app. So we work with different publications and podcasts and curate and narrate their content, basically. So we partner or work with publications like the Financial Times, The Economist, Guardian, and we also take specific podcast episodes and curate them onto our app. So it's a subscription-based app, and I look after growth there. So kind of across the whole funnel, as well as product marketing and paid user acquisition. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I think we're all talking a bit about how some of the things that we've been doing. So I wanted to talk about how did we get our best performing creative and all of the experiments that we've been running, basically. So with our lean team, we've at the moment worked out at running about one experiment every 2 days for the last year, and that's just on product and with our database comms. So with our ads as well, we're like constantly testing to get this specific creative. We tried out over 300 different combinations, and it hasn't saturated yet in a year across all geographies. So there are slight differences that we'll have seen between different geographies that, for example, with the UK, we'll notice that removing the App Store accolades kind of make it perform better, whereas in the US, that makes it perform so much better. So they really like you kind of shouting out about your achievements there. But yeah, just quickly, some of the creatives that we've run previously are all like this. So we kind of started in the top left and have kind of worked our way around a bit. So even back to having our old logo on there. So we speak to our users a lot, and speaking to them, we found out that why do they use Curio? They say that they want to become smarter, or they want to learn about things happening around the world. But when you really kind of push them further and ask them why more times, it's really because they want to connect more with people, and they want to have better conversations, and they want to become more interesting, really. So that kind of became the crux of it. So we kind of went from focusing on the publications we had to having a more aspirational message, basically, which has worked really well throughout the funnel. Yeah. Michael?
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Michael's slide?
Nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. And still
I
nothing
can see
is
the
happening.
invigilator going up there to make sure it happens.
Oh yeah, that's me. No. Hi guys. Thanks for being here, first of all, and we're not gonna keep you away from cocktails for a very long time. But yeah, so my name is Michael. I'm head of marketing at TaxFix. So for those who you don't know, TaxFix is basically an app-first product that we try to help people to get their refunds, tax refunds from the government. So basically, it doesn't sound like a sexy topic, but in reality, what we want to do is for people to stop hating taxes, but actually use our product to get the money back and not leave it on the table. Because what we found out is that there's approximately 22% of German population that never do their tax refunds, which basically is approximately 7 to 8 billion euros left to the government every year. So why don't you just claim it? So that's what we're trying to propagate here. But anyway, enough about the company. So what I wanted to kind of bring to the table, it was pretty hard, actually, pretty hard assignment to bring just one image and talk about something interesting that will engage you guys. So I brought this ugly thing, which is basically, for those who live in Germany, it is actually an annual payslip that you get approximately starting from the end of December, and legally you have to get it until the end of February. So we run quite a lot of different channels in TaxFix to try to engage customers, educate customers. We really kind of try to put a lot of effort into creatives, into really storytelling, into everything. But surprise, surprise, the best performing creative for the whole year, that thing, which basically was done, I think, in like 3 minutes. But all the money that we spent on really trying to make a high quality creatives really did not bring anything near what this one did. And I think this is a very interesting story, and there's a morale to it, to this story, to a degree. The thing is, people probably don't necessarily care about how high of a quality is your creative. It's more about, and probably like people who are from the creative agencies will hate me for that, but really what people want is something simple. Something that is relatable, something they have seen it, and especially like this thing comes in the mail, nobody knows what to do with this bloody thing. So when they see the ad that is basically the same thing that they hold in their hands, they start to relate to it, and they start to figure out what they can do with it. And when they see that they can actually get the money back for it, and on average in Germany it's more than 1,000 euros per year, so that's a pretty engaging thing. And at the end of the day, the ugly creatives, simple ugly creatives, worked way better than any fancy ones that we had. So that's my story that I wanted to tell, and I'm handing over to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael.
So thank you very much, guys. I'm Jake. I'm from Inflecto Media. We're a growth marketing agency. So essentially, we bring incremental users to our clients. And I think my role in strategy is essentially the middle ground between tech, data, and supply. So I think one of the most important things is using the data that you receive from campaigns to optimize what you're doing and to find new innovative channels. Now, I think that's kind of lended itself quite well to working with a lot of clients worldwide. And one of the trends I've definitely noticed working in different markets, different verticals, is that at the moment we're at a fairly fragmented point in the market where there's no one standard way of kind of everyone having the same sort of benchmarks for fraud or KPIs or how they measure quality. So as a result, I think the market's kind of reaching a tipping point where pretty soon we're going to need to have some sort of regulations put in place that's going to mean that we're more on a level playing field. And the same way that kind of GDPR has changed in the EU, how we handle and process data, I think that this is going to kind of change how we view fraud and how we identify and eliminate it. Now, I think it was AppsFlyer who said that in the first half of 2019, $2.3 billion was spent on in-store app fraud alone. If that money could kind of be repurposed to testing new channels, finding new pockets of user growth, I think that would be kind of a pretty exciting future for app growth itself. Now, one kind of stat which really stood out to me when I was kind of thinking about how you can find your audience across all the different channels is that at the moment, I think it's 62% of email opens are happening on mobile devices. Now, what that means is what we have now is a kind of modern mobile-first audience who are engaging across email channels. And I think that that's a really kind of valuable statistic when you're looking to find ways to grow your users outside of kind of the crowded, noisy channels that you see across kind of standard display buys, even social sometimes. I think a powerful thing about the emails that we see at the moment is that the creatives are a pretty strong middle ground between the visual impact you see of display creatives and display units and the content you see on social. So looking at the kind of image behind on the screen, you can see that you can kind of tie in the visual impact of the banner and then drive users through to the App Store where you can encourage engagement. So this is kind of a new channel that's opening up. I mean, I say new, email's kind of one of the oldest channels, but I think we can use it in a new way to approach this modern audience in a new kind of environment. So I think when I was speaking to one of my friends who works in user acquisition for an app, one of the first things he said was, so this is cold outreach on email. which he's heard of kind of plenty of times before. But what we've actually seen post-GDPR is I saw a lot of brands actually reaching out to their audiences again and saying, we want you to re-opt in to receive communications from us and from brands that you're going to be interested in. So all of a sudden you have kind of email lists curated that are vertical specific. People are opting in to hear from brands that they love, and they're engaging with these ad formats. I mean, and I think we were talking earlier, and you mentioned that post GDPR, you've seen engagement of your retention emails can actually increase.
Yeah, where all our kind of newsletter emails have over 50% open rate consistently, like with our whole user base. So it's huge.
It's huge, and I think that that's kind of a result of a less cluttered environment. You're more one-on-one with your audience. You can get your message across in an impactful manner, and I think we see the results in the engagement. So I think for me, this is a pretty exciting kind of future channel that can be exploited for mobile-specific users. And I think that not just this, but we'll see kind of as less budget is invested in kind of channels that are wasting ad spend, we'll see kind of VR, influencers, channels like this really start to increase their spend. And as a result, we'll be able to get more data, to learn more from our audience, and chase them across the channels where they're spending the most time.
Thank you very much, Jake. Just a question here for the audience. How many of you think that you actually open most of your personal mail on your smartphone? See, this is what we're talking about. Channels do not go away. Television did not get rid of radio. Radio did not get rid of cinema. But they change as time goes on. And so sometimes we have to think, it's back to the future. Think about how you can repurpose previous channels to actually work more effectively with new technology. And I think, Jake, you raised a very good point about that. Another question here for the audience. Sorry, getting a bit of feedback there. How many of us here have some sort of a home assistant, a Amazon Echo or Google Home Hub? How many of you listen to the radio, podcasts, or Spotify through this? So I'm actually going to throw the next question back over to Hannah to start off with, and then everybody else can chip in. Mm-hmm. How much of the future of digital is audio?
Yeah, I mean, audio is a space that's not really been explored that much before. So, I mean, other than music, obviously. So, in the last couple of years, a lot of kind of audio products have come and gone, and it's just never really felt like the right idea at the right time with the right technology, and it really feels like now is the right time for that, especially with all of these kind of smart speakers and Internet of Things connected devices coming out. So, I mean, growing an audio app with kind of no previous grounding in that in our culture really has been really hard, but at the same time it's super rewarding because we're breaking new ground really.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, previously all of the kind of audio apps have been aggregators for podcasts, and we're doing a completely new thing there. So yeah, and as you're mentioning, like those smart speakers, we've built an Android Auto, so you can use it in your car seamlessly. We've got an Apple Watch product, like a native watch app, and an Alexa app and everything, so you can kind of jump between these really seamlessly, which is definitely something that's going to be more and more important in the future.
Excellent. Anybody else want to chime in there?
Well, you mentioned podcasts as well. I think only over the past kind of 6 to 12 months have I seen kind of a whole huge amount of podcast apps appearing on the tube and on kind of a lot of traditional units across the UK. And I think even things like advertising within podcasts is reaching a point now where it's kind of similar to influencers, where you can kind of fit in with that tone of voice. You can approach an engaged audience, and you can approach them over an audio kind of unit. And I think that, utilising that as an advertising channel kind of falls back on
Definitely
finding these new areas of growth where audiences are spending their time. So, like you said, I think podcasts are more traditional audio things, but this is where people are spending their time, and it's going to be utilised in the future.
Definitely. Michael?
I mean, from my end, I think I've never managed to kind of make it work so far, like to do any audio advertisement. I think what I want to really test out is a bit of more kind of programmatic buying approach towards the audio advertisement here. So I think this is something we're definitely going to test in Q1. But I also heard that the radio still works really well, but everything we tested so far did not really show that. But maybe for some other brands. But yeah, so let's wait and see.
I mean, mentioning radio, we had a shout, which we didn't know about. A French radio station kind of covered our app in September, and we had the biggest day we've ever had in France ever. So, and it was completely all organic that we weren't expecting. So, wow. Yeah, radio as well can be super effective. So.
Who in the room listens to the radio? More than I expected.
And I was going to ask, how many people listen to the radio through your smart speaker?
Same people.
Yeah. So very few people seem to listen to the radio through the radio these days.
Yeah, fair enough.
But it's quite interesting, going back to what we were saying with Jake, actually, I first became involved in podcasts around about 2004. You know, these are not new. And it sometimes takes a long time for something to actually gain traction. But you're right, I'm seeing so many more adverts for podcasts, people are actually talking about podcasts, people talking about podcasts at work, which is something which I never actually thought I'd come across. But we're starting to get close to cocktail time, everyone. You excited? You won't be when you see the cocktail. Anyway, I wanted to come back to Michael, actually. One of the things which I really impressed me was that your advert was actually, you know, not the sort of thing you expect to see, and not necessarily ugly, but it was definitely incongruous amongst a world of, you know, shiny, bright, beautiful adverts. And I want to go back to this. How much branding do you think actually suffers because it's actually blanding? Stuff which looks like everything else out there, so people don't actually notice it.
Yeah, this is an interesting question because since I moved into the startup world, that's what I've been seeing, that everybody uses the same color scheme, everybody uses more or less the same approach to the imagery, everybody uses the same layout, so like how the hell do you kind of differentiate it? And frankly, we were to blame for this year so far. I think that we're just another app that shows the picture of somebody holding a phone with an app on it, which, you know, can be anything. So I think there is definitely a room for differentiation, and I think everybody's guilty of blending in with each other. This is, I think, what we're trying to achieve now, like probably next year. That's why we're really kind of focusing now on the whole brand approach. We're really focusing on the character of the brand, because at the end of the day, I really believe that as a startup, maybe in the first year, you can get away with not having like a special character and special really traits there, while after that, to really continue the growth and really become influential company, you have to have a very strong character, very, very strong differentiation from everybody else. And you should be an interesting person or as a company to be noticed. And that should be reflected in the creatives, for sure.
With that creative you're using, did you kind of overlay different call to actions, or did you go?
Yeah, we did. To be honest, all of them were showing the same results. So it was literally just this image. We even tried to polish that image. We tried to make a really cool video out of it with stop motion graphics and everything, and still that thing worked better. I hate that thing.
Anybody else got any thoughts to add on that?
Looking at me. Yeah, I mean, just talking back about your graphic again, we've tried with our kind of escalator image. We've tried that out the first time with just the escalator. Obviously, that didn't work. With just the logo, and then we were starting to see if we compared just images with logo on them, that one performed better by far, which is this kind of drab image of people going down an escalator. And then we started testing out all of these different copies on it, and our head of brand is driven crazy by it because she hates the line. But it's just time and time again, this is the best performing thing though, so we just have to stick with it.
You mentioned the Internet of Things. Like, how important do you think it is to have all of your creatives online, like in line with each other across all of the different devices, all the different channels, because obviously there's so many of them out there. Audiences are getting hit by all kinds of different brands. Do you tend to go for kind of one set theme and stick to it?
So we're continuously trying out different concepts for ads, and within that, like, we have Yuko as our designer there, but she's created all these amazing characters that are used kind of throughout our app branding. So we've tried out a lot with like these people doing things, and some of these have performed really well. Like, we've found one with some people in a kind of a tube listening to headphones, which is an animation, has worked really well. So we're in kind of next year, we're going to try and make all of our creatives a bit more cohesive, because although that works super well and the messaging matches our app store and everything, and it trickles down the funnel very well, but we want kind of everything to match. And yeah,
definitely second that, because as a performance marketing person, I should be saying that you really need to stick to whatever works in each of the channels, but at the end of the day, if you want to long-term growth, you really need to have the cohesiveness, the continuity across all the touch points, because otherwise people just get confused and they just don't remember what brand they use. They might not even recognize you from creative to creative.
Yeah. And falling back on the email creative that I showed earlier, the mobile one, I remember once we were kind of reading through the data that we were running on other channels, and we saw that video was working really well with specific audiences. And we saw a way that we could kind of build an animated GIF that looks very similar to that video that was performing really well, and embed that within a HTML creative and send it across over email, so within that enclosed environment. And we saw the same kind of engagement uptick that we saw running video compared to static banners. So I think, yeah, having that kind of consistency across the channels has definitely improved results.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I think we've got about time for one more question before we get down to cocktails. Just one thought, how many Brits here in the audience? Oh, less than I would have thought. But one other thing I've noticed actually with British TV advertising is that these days, quite often the adverts actually look exactly the same, no matter what they're for. So recently we had one for Churchill Insurance, which used to be by a bulldog who would just go, "Oh yes." And now he skateboards. It could be for anything. It could be for mobile phones, it could be for a car, but actually it's for insurance, but you would never guess it by looking at it. And it's because people seem to think that they have to tick so many boxes with an advert that you end up with something which actually doesn't convey any sort of message. Anyway, that's just my 2 pennies worth, as we say. The final question, which I'm going to address to Jake, as he has an agency's bird's eye view as to what's developing, and to give you, what sort of vertical app categories do you think we're going to see the most growth in over the next 2 years?
So I think looking at the next 2 years, it's also kind of important to see what we've seen growing over the past 12 months as well. So over the past 12 months ago, we saw huge growth in kind of finance apps, especially within APAC geos. And then we saw that kind of transition into EU, UK, US geos as well. I think it was HSBC who realized that kind of all of these challenger banks were having their apps, and they were like, well, crap, maybe we should make our own app as well. So we saw kind of huge growth within that, and then people kind of investing within these finance apps, and that kind of fit in with a lot of talks around finance at the time, like people's personal finance. And over the next kind of 12 to 24 months, I think we'll see similar trends where the kind of cultural or social climate is influencing what sort of apps people choose to use. So we've seen kind of a huge rise in the number of apps that kind of have a environmental or social impact. So apps like Olio, who donate food to people who need it most, or My Trees, who they're kind of like a lotto app, which is a very traditional vertical, but they're becoming more modern in that their profits are going towards planting trees. So I think that kind of fits in well with the current cultural climate and what kind of is going on with the news, what people are interested in, and how that influences app choice. So I think that, we'll continue to see people investing in this sort of app, continue to see them grow, and I think that that'll be a trend that we'll see over the next couple of years.
And so to put it in a nutshell, are we looking at where apps become more socially aware?
I think so, yeah. I think they'll need to fit in with the way that the kind of news in the world is going.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a trend that we've started to see already. A lot of apps are opening up, and they are in turn getting a lot of investment as well. And I think we'll continue to see it.
Would the rest of the panel tend to agree with that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair opinion, and I think one other thing, it's not even about the vertical of the apps. It's more whether the app has multiple services or multiple things to offer to the customer, because if they're really focused on only one service, it's usually a harder sell because people just want to see everything in one place and not be bothered to download like 150 apps. But overall, to be honest, like I can't really forecast anything. I still think the zombie apocalypse will happen next year. So.
Yeah, I mean, just coming back to you talking about kind of Olio, and I think having an ethical stance often is super important nowadays, like with kind of all of the Greta Thunberg and all of, you know, save the planet things that are happening. Like everyone is caring more and more about how they're spending their money and what good is that doing for either themselves or the planet. So yeah, with these kinds of apps, it's definitely they're going to get bigger than ever.
Jump in myself. I think there's so much about actually trying to save, but also about becoming more efficient in a way which is going to help the planet. Actually getting food from places where there's excess to where it's actually needed, I think people will be tending to buy into, and actually how you can match that in with the logistics chain. I think it's very interesting that you say, and it's reflecting the priorities of people today. I think one of the things we've seen is that definite growth in finance apps, definite growth in things about keeping you safe as well in terms of security tools to actually make sure that your phones are locked down, etc. This is one thing I hadn't actually asked you guys beforehand, but this is just one final point, because I know your tongues are starting to hang out over there. Don't worry, it's going to be delicious. I was lying earlier on. And tell your friends to come in from the outside. I can hear them. Do you think we've actually plateaued in terms of... well, everybody's talking about the apps, but have we plateaued in how much the hardware is constraining app development? Is there anything else that we could actually have a phone do that it's not doing at the moment?
I mean, that's a very open question.
It is. And it's probably going to ruin the entire panel for everyone.
Well, even with the Internet of Things that we were talking about earlier, people aren't just constrained to their phones, are they? You've got Apple Watches where you can download apps. You've got kind of Amazon Echo where you can download apps of its own sort as well. So I don't think you are constrained by hardware, because each hardware will adapt and create its own kind of native application that you can use to grow your audience, right? So the same way that people will start bidding on audio on Amazon Alexa, I'm sure there'll be other hardware that's introduced that people will start being able to bid on across inventory for that as well.
Yeah, so, I think voice control as well is going to be more and more important as we go on. So, I mean, using CarPlay or Android Auto, a lot of that is done through kind of your voice control, and we've found that like integrating with Siri and being able to even search within, which we haven't built yet, but being able to search within the stories with Siri and like say, tell me, I want to listen to something about this, or I want to listen to something about robots, you know, and being able to pull those stories out, like that kind of makes the user's experience more efficient, and everyone's always just trying to save time now. So like we've seen that if there's more than a 3-second load time for anything, more than 50% of users will drop off. So just making everything as quick and as easy for people as possible.
Right, well, we're actually about out of time. Thank you for that. It's actually, again, it's almost Back to the Future again, because even since the 1960s, we've been talking about some sort of connected house. And it now seems that we've actually, rather than building a connected house, we've built disparate elements which are coming together to give you not only a connected house, but a connected lifestyle. I'd like to thank everybody for being part of this panel. Michael, I'm afraid to tell you, whilst you're still in debt and if you've never done your homework, the zombie apocalypse never happens.
Damn.
But thank you very much, Hannah, Michael and Jake. Thank you very much for sitting through to the end of this session. This was the last session of today, and we now shall go into the cocktails. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Whoop, whoop.